Judge Sherman Hatton Jr. has been on an incredible journey. He was raised in a loving, godly home with his parents, brothers, and sister. He never wanted for anything. His house was full of love and support. He had a vision for his life, and he used his vision to set out on his mission. After he graduated from high school, he intended to play football when he found out he wouldn't be able to. This was one of many obstacles he would endure on his path. After receiving some motivation from his mom, who he lovingly refers to as my dear, he pivoted from there and was able to go on, graduate from college, and decided to pursue a career in law. What happened next was unimaginable, but he was able to dig deep and overcome, becoming an elected judge and being a beacon of light for all who encounter him. Judge Hatton is here with us to share his deeply personal journey and its connection to breast cancer. He's going to share his tragedy, his triumph, to motivate, encourage, and inspire you. What's up, Motivator family? It's Demetrius Lopez and Chris Lopez.
How y'all doing?
Here with Clair Em Motivators, and today we have a very special guest for you, our friend Judge Sherman Ray Hatton Jr.
Hello. Hey, fam.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing well, blessed.
One of our missions with Clair Em Motivators is to share the personal stories of people that we know and ourselves in an effort to motivate, inspire, and encourage everybody out there that you can overcome anything. One thing that Chris and I always say is that on your path, you are going to fall. And when we say that, we mean it. You are. As much as you plan for your life, as much as you have a vision for your life, there are things that are going to happen that are completely unexpected. And there will be times on your journey through life where you fall. But what we also say is you can overcome it. And when we say you can overcome it, we mean it. And the best way that we can think to share that with you all is to share the stories of people like Judge Hatton who have done that very thing. Judge Hatton has experienced unthinkable tragedy along the journey in his life, and he's sitting before you today as the first elected Black judge in Fort Bend County. And we are so proud of you and so thankful to you for what you do, for who you are, and for sharing your story to help inspire other people along those journeys.
And so, Judge, thank you for being here with us today. And one thing one thing we like to do, in our videos, and we're going to do it here with you today, is we like to ask our guests, like, what motivates you to keep pushing forward and doing what you do?
I say first and foremost, God. I'm nothing without him. And I don't say that as a cliche. It's really one of those things to where I know that I'm blessed to be in the position that he wanted me to be in. And I don't take that for granted. So I definitely say I found my motivation in trying to seek what his will is for me. And that's first and foremost. I'd say second to that, it's my parents. I really was blessed with phenomenal parents. And I feel an onus to try to do my best to repay them for everything they put into me and to try to be the son and to be the representative. I'm a junior and I take that very seriously. I'm supposed to be the representative of them, even though they're not here anymore. That's part of my purpose.
All right, that's amazing. You just mentioned your parents and you mentioned your family. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to tell the people that are watching about your
family. Well, my parents they were country folk. They were from the country. My dad's from Wallace, Texas. My mom's from Fulshear. Fulshear is in Fort Bend as well. I'd say Fulshear is a lot different now than it was back then. It used to not have any of the stuff that it has now. Both of my parents come from a place that even when I was young, there was no McDonald's in the town. There was no grocery stores. There was no Walmart. And I spent a lot of time out there, but we come from a big family. My family, there are 4 kids. But I had a lot of cousins growing up, a lot of family growing up. My parents, my father was a pastor. My mom was a minister as well. I grew up singing in the choir. My mom was one of the lead songstresses in the choir, and my dad was the choir director before he was a pastor. So that's kind of my roots. I don't know if y'all just wanted to get the base of the foundation, but that's
Yeah, no, that's perfect. You just described like that Southern feel. I could feel it as
Right.
you were talking.
Right.
That Southern family feel.
Absolutely. And family, is important. And, we're here to talk about, an experience that you had, losing your parents. And one thing I wanted to ask you is if you could kind of give us an idea of, kind of tell us a little bit about like your parents.
Okay. Well, my mother, and it is breast cancer awareness month. My mother, when I was probably about 12 or 13, we found out that she had breast cancer then. Thank God, she had to go through a lot of stuff then. I remember it, even though I was young, it was really traumatic for the whole family. But it went into remission for a very long time. It was my 1L year in law school, actually right before I started law school. So right before I started my 1L year in law school, that's when we found out that the cancer had come back. It came back as bone cancer. It was very aggressive. It was one of those things to where we thought all the prognoses that we had were, at the very least 10 more years. But I say with my second year in law school, my parents, the money got really tight. When you are doing your best to run a church, you don't always think about insurance and things of that nature. So went through a lot of that. They moved in with me my second year of law school, and it was a blessing. It was a blessing because I didn't know it at the time that time right there would be just extremely valuable to me. I had my daughter at the time was pretty young. I was married, but I was a former teacher, but law school was a pretty new thing for me. And I'd already completed my first year before they moved in, but my second year of law school, my son was born. And so it was a lot of things going on at a time that I didn't know was going to be really profound for me. And because by my third year of law school, things had gotten pretty bad. It was later stages. She was already stage 4 by my third year of law school. They got to see me graduate. That was one of the things that I was really, really ecstatic about. And we didn't know if that was going to happen. It was, well, I would say this right here. We had belief and faith that it would happen. So I would say man said that it might not happen, but God had something different. My mother passed on Labor Day after I graduated from law school. So basically just a couple of months after I graduated. And I was really worried about my father. My father was, my parents had a love and a marriage that I would really understand. They had been married for over 37 years, and they were truly each other's helpmates. They were truly, two sides of the same coin. Not necessarily the same person, but they were symbiotic. They lived for each other. And got my father home from the hospital that night with my brothers. And the next morning, I got a text from my brother. My father sent out a text to everyone, and it ended up being a suicide text. Didn't know what was going on. Basically, by the time I read the text, my brother, he was banging on my door because he had read the text. I didn't know what was going on. He told me, Daddy has a text that's really scary. And went in my backyard and I found my father with my brother at the same time.
Wow.
And shortly after that, I had to take the bar. So it was one of those things to where it was a lot. It was a lot. I would say that it was a lot because I really felt like everything that I was doing and even up to that point was, from their encouragement.
Right.
So lose them at that point, it was devastating for me. It really was truly devastating. It was, I was very, very close to my parents. My mother, I called her Mama Dear. Everybody knew that she was very, very close to me. My father was close to me in a different way, but extremely close to my father, extremely close to my father, extremely close to my mother.
Right. That's just like I said, even listening to that and hearing that, I could just feel the love through the screen that you have for your family and for your story. And so you gave us a lot of life in just a couple of minutes. And so I want to take a second to unpack some of that.
Yeah.
So when you were younger, would you say that your family, that you grew up with the silver spoon in your mouth, or no?
Oh, no.
Humble beginnings, as they would say.
Yeah, I definitely say humble beginnings. And there were times, the thing about my father, and I think that when you are a selfless person, financial situations are not always going to be the best. They're not always going to be the worst, but they're always going to be the best.
Right.
And, my father, he does have an engineering background. He was an engineer for Shell. But when I was probably around the same time that my mother got breast cancer the first time, is when he was laid off. He had been working there for 22 years. Shell, he got laid off, and that's kind of how the oil business is. It was one, it's still a up and down type of business.
Right.
So finances were always kind of up and down, but I would say that even though we felt like we couldn't have everything, we already felt like we had everything.
Right. You wanted for nothing. And you have two brothers and a sister.
Yes. I'm the oldest. I have a younger brother, Brandon, that's closest to me. He's 2.5 years younger than me. And then my youngest brother, Marcus, is about 8 years younger than me. My sister is 9 years younger.
So it sounds like your house is full of love and full of God. And y'all, you have a vision for your life, right? You have a vision for where you're going to go. And then your mom gets cancer the first time. You said your faith, your family, everybody leaned into that. And so y'all believed that she was going to be fine.
Yes.
And then you go to law school, and you mentioned that in law school, you had 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
You're working, you got married.
Yep.
And you're, doing that, which is a job in and of itself. Yeah. And then mom gets sick again, moves into the house with you. Your parents actually move into the house with you. I know your story, so you didn't mention this, but I'm going to slide this in because I think it's important. You played football before you went to law school, right? Can you tell us about that?
Well, if we're going there, and I know we're talking about persevering, I'll back it up even a little behind football. So my junior year in high school, I was told about West Point as far as like the advantage of West Point and going to West Point Academy. I was sold on it. I knew that I really didn't have the funds for law school, and I knew that they would pay for it. I thought that JAG was an excellent opportunity for me. I wanted to be a lawyer even back then. My parents, not just my mother, my parents were very encouraging and very happy about it. And it ties into football because I really kind of turned down a lot of football scholarships because I wanted to go and play football for West Point, but also go to school for West Point. West Point, for me, that was a bigger thing. My grandfather is a World War II and a Korean War vet, and I have a lot of family that's all in the military in every branch. From 2 of my uncles, actually, I'm sorry, my uncle and my mom said we met. 3 of my uncles, many cousins, and of course, like I said, my grandfather as well. Turns out I had the DOD right when I was going up. Because you actually start in either June or July. Found out that I have childhood asthma, and they won't let me go. So that was kind of the first kind of traumatic thing because it was a huge disappointment. You have to work for about a year and a half just to get accepted. You have to have a recommendation from sometimes either senator or somebody that's kind of important. There's a big physical process as far as going through a lot of tests with that. They're looking at everything, and I was really honored to get in, and then it just got taken away from me. God bless, I was still able to go to Tulane, go play ball there. But then I had some injuries, knee injuries, multiple knee surgeries, and realized that because of that, I wasn't going to be able to complete my career. And this is for me, this was when my mama was at her best. I came home, I really was upset, angry, and really wasn't even thinking about college in the same way. I really thought that, football was going to be everything. My mom reminded me that she always told me that my brain was much more important than my body.
Yeah.
And she told me from when I was playing Little League up until that point was they could take away your body, but they could never take away your brain, your mind. And that was so much more important than what I was doing on the field. She reminded me of that. I had started working for actually BFI, the trash company, and I was working in the office. I was for somebody who hadn't finished college. I was making some pretty good money, and I'll never forget it. My mom wrote me a letter, old school letter, just handwritten letter, and basically the letter was that I wasn't living to my potential, and she was worried about me being trapped there and getting accustomed to that money, and knowing that that wouldn't last, and that's really not what God had for me. And that's when I went back to school. I was blessed. I finished up at Prairie View. That's when my mom went to school, and that was one of my biggest blessings because she put me back on track. And that's kind of how she always was. My father as well, but my mom was the one that, she called me Bubba. That was my nickname, and she'd be like, "Bub, we got to talk." And that's just kind of how she always was.
Right. And even, then it's like you have this vision, right? I'm going to West Point. This is what my life is going to be. And then something unexpected happens, you fall.
Yes.
Somebody's there to motivate you to get back up, and that somebody is your mom. And then, you go to a different school, you go to a job. As you're going through life, you have this vision, right? This plan. You decide this is where I'm going to go, this is what I'm going to do. And then, you're running into these hurdles along the way. And like you said, you had somebody come in and motivate you to say, no, you're not living up to your full potential. That's beautiful. And so then to get us back to where we were, you said your mom passed away from breast cancer and you acknowledged it. One of the reasons why we wanted you here is because we know you have a very personal connection to breast cancer, and it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so your mom passes away from breast cancer while you're in law school with the young family, working, trying to figure it all out. And then you get a text from your brothers and you find out that your father has committed suicide, days after your mom dies from breast cancer?
No, so we left from the hospital that night. It was the next morning.
The next morning, so it wasn't even days, just mom passes away. Morning. Yeah, and then you find personally your father at your house.
Yeah, my brother not found him. So so that's really how it played out. My brother, I hadn't seen the text. I'd been asleep. I went to bed pretty late that night. It was in the morning, and again, my brother was just banging on the door. And when he tells me that, because we had our concerns the night before, when he tells me that, I ran around the house and we were looking, and then I had this really, really bad feeling, and went to the backyard, and he was there.
Wow. Wow. I mean, and look, this is really deep stuff, to be talking about. So one, I just want to, express our appreciation for you, even your willingness to kind of go through this tragic experience with us again and kind of speak to that, because I don't take that for granted.
Right.
Because
I'll say this though, the blessing is that time doesn't really heal like they say that it does. God heals, and I can talk about that part of it, even though it's a darker part of it, and that's easier for me to talk about than even the letter. What I'm saying? The letter makes me emotional because I know the support, and I know the love that was it with that. So that's the sweeter time. That's the sweeter memory.
Yeah.
And that's if I get emotional, that's what I'm getting emotional about.
Yeah.
It's at that time, and man, when I tell you God is good, because it did take me a long time to get out of that. I had to literally take the bar and try to block that out of my head, literally seeing,
Right.
going through it, and just I still remember it now, just really trying to block it out of my head to focus on it.
Right.
And you're talking about the bar even
By itself.
by itself is a really traumatic experience.
Yes.
I'll never do it again.
Praise God.
I'll never do it again. That was the one-time thing. I'll never do it again. I would
Right.
never.
I mean, and luckily you don't have to, because you
Right.
passed, even
But
with
no,
everything that you
yes.
went through.
But that speaks to your triumph, and
Yes.
how you were able to persevere through all of that and still take sit down and take the bar and
Right.
then pass.
Right.
That's tremendous. And so and you kind of hit on how basically going through all that, how is it impacted you, has it affected you. You talked about basically the positive memories, and I definitely can relate to that. I understand exactly what you're talking about. But if you can,
I know you understand. I know you know.
yeah, absolutely. Like I definitely know exactly what you're talking about. But if you can kind of tell people about even now today, how it has gone through all of that, how has that like impacted you and affected you?
I think it gives you more of a resilience. My father had one of his sayings that he always had was, "But God." No matter what, but God. No matter what, but God. And another thing he always said is that you're not going through, you're growing through.
Yeah.
And so it gives you a sense of resiliency that if you can go through that, there's nothing you can't go through.
Absolutely.
It had me deal with things quite differently. I remember being a prosecutor with Demetrius or whatnot, and sometimes you might have a judge that gets upset or something like that, and we would always joke about it because you've seen so much that can't get you riled up. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything, right? So that's the blessing side of it, is that you really feel like you come through the fire a lot stronger when you get through it. So that's the positivity of it. That's what you can turn into something that's much more of a positive than the negative. And I think that's what I started trying to focus on as well.
And that was going to be my question. So it sounds like the way you turned that tragedy into triumph was to focus on the positive and take the lessons. I mean, even just now talking to you, you mentioned the sayings that your mom had, the sayings that your dad had, the love for God that they taught you. Is that how you turned that tragedy into triumph, by relying on God first and foremost, and then using the positive things that your parents left with you to fuel you in your career? As I mentioned earlier, you are the first Black elected judge in Fort Bend County. That's
Well, I'll say this. There were other elected with me. I was the first to take office.
First to take office. Make sure we get that correct. First to take office.
I was the first to take office. To take office. But so, and I don't want to miss this, because I felt like it was put on my spirit. All of that was very true, but therapy helped as well. It was one of those things that, mental health is so important, and I think it's one of the things that we can take for granted. And I think that people need to understand that everybody deals with it. And I know that my wife was very instrumental in pushing me to therapy, because it was one of those things that I really thought that, no, I could deal with it on my own, and deal with the things you just talked about, positivity and trying to turn that tragedy into a triumph. But I still feel like I would not have been in the place that I need to be at without therapy. So that was a big help. It helped me to understand that it was all right to be angry.
Right.
It was all right to be frustrated.
Right.
All right to question God. It was all right to do all those things that you kind of feel like you almost feel guilty for feeling, right? And so for me, that was a big help as well. I would say that all the things that you mentioned, relying upon those things, but I had to come to terms before I can even see that, before I remember that.
Right. I don't know if something's resonating with me. Like you said, it just drops in your spirit. Something's resonated with me because I am sitting with two African American males who are acknowledging, one, that you can be vulnerable and that's okay. And
Yeah.
that two, therapy works and you should go if you're feeling however you're feeling. That is amazing to see, like I said, two men, regardless of the race, able to own that and to encourage and inspire and motivate other people to do the same thing. That's beautiful. The other question that I wanted to ask in terms of that, a lot of the breast cancer awareness stuff is marketed towards women. There's a lot of pink, there's a lot of stuff that's marketed towards women, and men acknowledge it, but you both have a very personal connection to
Yes.
losing someone from that disease. For people who this is your first time seeing us, Chris's mom actually passed away from breast cancer as well, as did Judge Hatton's. And so for you, Judge Hatton, how do you feel men can help when it comes to breast cancer awareness?
I well, first off, you mentioned African American, and I'm going to speak specifically for that because I think that there's a huge disparity still with Black women who suffer from breast cancer in higher numbers than other groups. And there's nothing more important than from a historical perspective to a present perspective to a future perspective than the Black woman when it comes to the African American community. There's nothing more important. That's been the source of our strength, the source of us going on despite whatever odds. That's been this. So they can't do it alone. We have to be active. We have to preach. And it's one of those things that, my sister is much younger, but I still tell her all the time, like, hey, we need, are you getting checked out? And she's telling me that, that she is. I think that that's a huge help for more men. And this is going back to this globally, regardless of color, ethnicity, or creed, more men need to be involved into getting early awareness, early. It doesn't hurt to check early. You don't have to wait. I have cousins that have passed as well in the 30s from breast cancer. So it's one of those things that that kind of support early could mean that you don't have to support them in their dying days. And
yes,
more important than that, what could be more important than that? To I feel like that's when you really show your support by showing your support, not just talking.
right, right. One of our favorite sayings here at Clair Em Motivators is that the vision that you have is where you see yourself going, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has a vision. The mission is how you get there, right? You can have a vision, but if you don't know how you're going to get there, and if you don't plan to fall and you don't plan to get back up,
Yeah.
you're going to have a hard time. And so, what advice can you give to people that have the vision, they're on their mission, and they've fallen? What advice can you give them to help them get back up?
I think it goes back to what you said about it's okay to be vulnerable. Um, uh, you know, it's kind of like I take everything back to sports, but that's kind of my motivation as well. I'm a very competitive person. So with football, you're expected to fall at times. It's just part of the game. But you're also expected to get up just as fast as you fell.
Right.
And one of the mottos that I always have for myself is, and I tell myself that, and I have to remind myself, is not to lie to myself. And that means that if I'm truly not feeling the way that I might be projecting that I'm feeling, that I need to own that. If I'm really not putting forth the effort that even maybe I'm projecting, I need to own that as well. And when I started doing that, that's helped me out a lot with what you said as far as the mission. Because potential is just one part of it. It's
Right.
a small part of it. The execution is everything, right? So it's kind of like what you said as far as be understanding that you're going to fall. I mean, Chris is an athlete as well. It's one of those things where it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not one of those things that you dread. It's just you're actually already ready for the get back up.
Right.
So
Right.
if you're prepared to get back up, and then also being honest with yourself,
Yes.
then you know that you can ask for help. Then you
Right.
tell people, that's why I'm so thankful for my relationship with you all, because I can get on the phone with either one of y'all, and it's been like that for years. And if something is wrong, I can sit, even if I'm not ready to share everything yet, right?
Right.
Nothing is wrong that I can say that I can be honest and say, well, I'm not right now.
Right.
You know? And that's strength in that, right? There's a lot of strength in that. You can pull from that. So that's the biggest thing. I know it was kind of like a lot in one, but
that was all great.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
stuff
absolutely.
I think is a huge help to that mission.
Right. Right. I mean, you dropped a lot of great nuggets,
Yes.
and you know, one thing particularly I think that really stood out for me in hearing what you say is that journey for your mental health. You know, and you talk about going to go seek counseling.
Yes.
You know, I've told people, I've given people the analogy that, you know, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. So we go to the gym and we work out to be healthy physically. Well, you have the same thing with mental health, with going to counseling. That's like that mental training. And so, you know, with that, man, you've given us a lot of great information. Before we, you know, close this thing out, is there anything else that you like to share about breast cancer awareness, your journey, or just about you and your experience in general?
I would just say this right here. I'm gonna be a little selfish right now. I just want to congratulate y'all. I want to take this time to congratulate y'all. I'm so proud. I'm so proud of y'all to you know, when you can take a journey with people that you really care about and you see that they genuinely care about people and they want to reach out to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I had a professor back in college that was very critical of American foreign policy. And he always say that America never does anything that's truly efficacious, truly altruistic. There's always a hidden agenda, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that, you know, tying it back to my father, he was a pastor that if you had a cousin, sister's brother that was going through something and that person lived 2 hours away and you call him at 2 a.m, he's going to be on the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was genuine. It wasn't an act. It wasn't fake. With you all, I know that it's the same thing, and you're blessing a lot of people with this. And I need you to understand how important that is. You sometimes you don't even realize the impact that you can have on people, but that's that gift. You're being used as a vessel to do that. And I just want to congratulate you and encourage you to keep it going. As for me, I'm blessed. I'm doing exactly what I feel like God wants me to do. I'm trying to honor my parents in doing that. I'm trying to make sure that I'm making the difference every day. You know, one of the things that I always, you know, pray about and before I get on the bench is, Lord, help me be just, right? And I get that from them, and that's to honor them as well. So for them, all I want to do, I say that all the time, and I tell my kids that so they can understand what it truly means to me to say that. I just want to make them proud. That's all I want to do.
Well, you have done that and more. We are so grateful for you, not only to have you as a mentor in our lives and a friend, but like I said, being able to reach so many people and sharing your story. We are life coaches, we are motivational speakers, and that the very thing that you just mentioned is the purpose of Clair Em. You know, we've all experienced things, and like you said, be honest with yourself and be honest with other people and let them know. Y'all see us and you think, oh, he's a judge. Oh, he's an attorney. Oh, she's an attorney. Their lives are perfect. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. We all have stories. We all have journeys. But like Judge Hatton said, we kept our eyes on the prize, stuck to the mission, had a vision, planned to fall and planned for the get up.
Right.
And we're still here on this journey, and it'll be this way. You know, you, as long as you're living, you're going to deal with something. And so thank you for sharing those nuggets with us to help people on their journeys. As always, if you all need anything, you can reach us at booking@clairemmotivators.com. We know that you learned something. We know that you were motivated. We know that you are inspired and encouraged. And we just ask you to take care of yourselves, take care of your communities, and take care of each other. And we will see you all in the next video. Bye.
All right.